There is a very large part of the Bible which can be received by us only when we come into the place for which the words were given. There are promises for weakness which we can never receive while we are strong. There are words for times of danger which we can never know while we need no protection. There are consolations for sickness whose comfort we can never get while we are in robust health. There are promises for times of loneliness when men walk in solitary ways, which never can come with real meaning while loving companions are by our side. There are words for old age, which we never can appropriate for ourselves along the years of youth, when the arm is strong, the blood warm, the heart brave. God cannot show us the stars while the sun shines in the heaven. That's a quote by J.R. Miller, and it's something that's so appropriate for what we're going to talk about today, and we'll get to that in a minute. But we welcome you to Looking Up. This is a podcast for Christian women. My name is Carla Moore, and I'm here with my friend, Kathy Pollard. And we are so excited to have you as friends. And I just spent a week at Polishing the Pulpit and ran into so many of you who expressed how you feel like we're just all friends, and we are. And I loved hearing those things from you. It was so encouraging. And I've shared those things with Kathy. Wish she could have been there to hear the things that you said. So thank you for joining us. We just want to spend this hour or so encouraging us to all look up where God is, seated at the right hand of God, and to keep our mind on things that are above, not on things that are on the earth. And, we live here on this earth, and there are a lot of things that are going on. And we've just spent some time talking about some things that are going on with family and friends that we love. And there are hard times going on. But God is good, is always good, and He's always there with us, always walking with us, and He always knows what's going on in our hearts and minds. And so we're so grateful for that. And we want to talk a little bit more about that in a little while. But first, we want to just see how things are going. So tell me what's going on your side of the country.
Hey, that quote was beautiful. I've never heard that one, never run across it. I loved it. That was so good.
Thank you.
We're in the midst of VBS. So
Mm-hmm.
when this comes out, it'll be all behind us. But tonight's our last night, and it's been such a good year. I was telling you a little bit earlier that we've had great attendance, and we've had great classes in the evening for the adults. And especially, it's been great just seeing all the many hands that have come together and helped out and make this happen. And that's probably my favorite part of it all. You just kind of look around and there's so many different things, as you know, that go on with
Mm-hmm.
whether it has to do with, food or teaching or decorating or bringing people in, or all these different areas, just seeing all the hands that go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And even, a lot of that happens on the front end
Right.
and prep
Planning.
work. A lot of it happens in the middle because you got people singing the songs and teaching the classes and walking kids around, all that kind of stuff. But even in the moment, all those little areas of things that pop up, here's a need here, there's a need here. And it seems like as soon as that need pops up, there's somebody standing there that says, oh, I'll take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take care of that. And I don't know what it was about last night, but I just kept especially noticing that. And it just made me feel so encouraged and so grateful. God's family is just the best. And
Mm-hmm.
um, when everybody just comes together, it's not a hardship, it's not really work, it's just something beautiful
Mm-hmm.
and that we get to experience together. And of course, seeing all the kids having a good time.
Yeah.
There's that also,
When they
but
come out wearing their crowns or their little things
exactly.
that have the pipe cleaners, all little ears.
Yeah,
It's cute.
yeah, it is.
Well, I'm glad it's
So,
working. You
mhm,
had shared with me how you had people that were doing things even before they knew what needed to be done. They were volunteering to do those things, and
mhm,
that is so great. Not
yeah.
not everybody has that. So I think we need to learn to look for what needs to be done instead of waiting for someone to ask us, and that's kind of hard sometimes.
Yeah, or I think my struggle most is I think you're good at that. You're good at seeing a need and just filling it. You kind of have that practical ability to see things. And I kind of get in this mindset. I have a hard time thinking outside the box in almost every area. And I
Mhm.
think it comes along like, well, if I'm in the kitchen, then that's my area. I don't really pay attention to anything else. And there are so many people there last night that I was learning from that aren't that way at all. You've got um, this guy just happened to be standing around, Stephen Pitcock, and we were talking about how I'll need to pick up some more bottled water for tomorrow night's bottled water cooler because we want. And he goes, "Oh, I'll pick some up."
Yeah.
And I'm like going, "That's not even your area."
Yeah. That's not a
Yeah,
fun job.
that's not even your role during VBS, But
Mm-hmm.
I just saw that. I've seen that all week long. Just people, they just happen to see it. I'll take care of that. I'll do that. I'll do that. Let me do this. Let me help you with this. It's just
It's awesome.
God's family.
Yeah. When I run into problems when I think maybe they don't want me to do this, I always doubt myself, like
Oh, yeah.
with certain situations, they may not want my help with that. And so I kind of
Yeah.
waffle over whether or not to do it. But I think sometimes we can just do it anyway.
That's
If
right.
it's the right thing, just do it anyway,
If they don't want you, you'll pick up on that vibe also.
right? Yeah. Some are more vocal and it'll show up on their face if they don't want you to do something, right?
Well, I thought of you this week because I ran across the cutest little thing and it said, it had to have your name written all over it. I almost sent it to you. And then I thought, I'm going to save it for the podcast. It said, if you're thrifting, do you know that doesn't count as shopping?
Hey,
It counts as saving the planet.
well, I'm a hero now.
You're a hero.
I ran into a
We
lot of
already
heroes at
knew.
PTP too.
We already knew that was your superpower, but
There was a woman that I ran into, and she hasn't sent me a picture of it yet. I asked her to. She's the one I was telling you about, who expressed how she feels like we're internet friends, and now we're real friends. But she found a wooden bowl at a Goodwill somewhere near her, or maybe it wasn't even a Goodwill because she said she got it for 99 cents, and you can't even get anything for 99 cents at Goodwill. And she refurbished it, like it looked like she put some oil on it and just
oh,
kind of gave life to this wooden bowl. And I love
mm-hmm.
wooden bowls. I think
Me
there's so much
too.
character to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm hoping that she'll send me a picture of the before and after, and I'll share it in the group.
Oh,
So there's lots
yeah.
of thrifters out there. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like there is a lot of thrifters because I don't find as many good deals anymore. I haven't been lately, haven't had time, but
It's probably your fault
it might
because
be.
everybody wants to be like you now. And so they're
Uh,
all out there getting the good stuff.
they don't want to be like me, but they want to find the good stuff. So just I need to back that out and say, nobody needs to go thrifting, or at least wait until after I've been and gone. I always feel this sense of competition, like, and I'm not very competitive, but when I drive up, it's funny because, like, I'll go a week without going, but then when I'm driving up, I'm like, I gotta hurry inside. I gotta get in there. What are they? People are in there ahead of me. They're gonna find the good stuff, and I'm gonna miss it.
Oh, I'm going to have to thrift with you one day just to see you in that mode.
Yeah. Well, it's not a pretty one.
Speaking of shopping, as of this recording, today and yesterday were Prime Days.
Yeah.
So did you find anything good?
Oh, okay, I did. And now I should have thought about that ahead of time. I haven't got anything yet, but I did order a few things yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, tell us what you found, and I'll look at my list.
Well,
Did you find something?
I haven't really picked up a lot yet. I have so far bought a vacuum.
A good one?
We No,
Oh,
we just replaced our vacuum. We had the same vacuum cleaner for about 10 years, and we just replaced it, and it's the worst vacuum ever. I mean, it feels like a big plastic toy, and it has hardly any power. We found it at Sam's. It is terrible. So I'm already wanting to replace it. So we got one of those little, well, we ordered it. It hasn't shown up yet, but it's like one of those little canister vacuums, that
mm-hmm.
has the big long hose so that you can do stairs and under
Yeah.
couches. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've never had one like that before, but I'm gonna give it a try and see how it is. I'll let you know. But it wasn't that expensive because of the Prime Day sale.
Mm-hmm.
And the only other thing I got was some under eye brightener.
I found that
But
looking at pictures of myself last week, I need a link to that. It's like,
I'll let you
oh,
know if it's any good.
yeah.
But my sister asked me to update my wish list on Amazon because she uses the Prime Days to do Christmas shopping, which I thought was genius. So then I
Yeah.
turned around and sent that same message to everybody in our family, like our family
Mm-hmm.
text. Everybody send me your, like update your wish list so we can do some Christmas shopping. So hopefully I'll have some time to do that today. I'm not really sure if I'll get to it or not, but
Yeah, VBS cooking. Okay, I'll tell you some things that I found.
okay.
One of them that I bought for myself is called, it's a KitchenAid slider. and I just saw it. It came across it worked on me. It came across my news feed somewhere. And
Oh.
it's a little wooden piece. It's kind of shaped like the bottom of your mixer, but it has some kind of feet on the bottom that, because I keep mine kind of in the corner.
I do
And so I
too.
always have to pull it forward, and it's heavy, and it like boom, 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 boom.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always afraid it's going to fall over and crack my countertop. So this is supposed to just kind of slide it forward, almost like on not wheels. It's not wheels. It's probably like felt pads or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably something I could have done for $5 somewhere, and it wasn't very expensive. It might have been like 17 or 18.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'll use that because I slide it back and forth so often, and that would help. But also, I will break silence on a couple of Christmas presents because I think other people might want to know about these. I told you about them yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
There's something called it's called a Prepared Hero fire protection blanket. And I don't know how big they are. I want to say they're probably, I think I looked at it before, like 4 feet by 5 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a packaged fire retardant blanket. And instead of having to pull out a fire extinguisher and then like, what do I do with this? Which I've done before. Yep. Like pull the pin, aim it, whatever. Is it still working and all that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff? Because mine's been under the sink for 15 years. But this is something you just throw on top of a fire if it's on the
Oh.
stove or if it's somewhere in the house. Of course, if it's a raging fire, you can't use it. But
Mm-hmm.
for most of the things that start like that in the oven, if something
Mm-hmm.
happened, you could just throw it into the oven and it would immediately put the fire out. So I got those for all of the kids for Christmas. That's
Oh.
going to be one of their gifts because it's not something you want to buy for yourself, really. It's not fun, but it's
Okay, when
something I think
you told me about it,
you
I
didn't know
didn't
what it
know.
was.
What I thought it was for their children, like an extra layer on their bed, so that if the
Mm-mm.
house catches fire, they are protected by this fire resistant blanket. That's
No,
what I
it's for
thought
an
it
actual
was.
fire.
Gotcha.
No,
That
we
makes
saw
way more
them.
sense.
Yeah, we saw them advertised somewhere, and I put it in my cart back in whenever it was. And I keep moving it out, save
Mm-hmm.
for later. And they were on sale during Prime Day. I'll send you a link to it later.
Okay.
And the other thing is a choking prevention hazard. And it kind of looks like it kind of kind of looks like a toilet plunger, but it fits over the face. It's for adults and kids, but it pulls, and I've seen these advertised too. It pulls like you use to depress it and then pull it so that
Mm-hmm.
whatever is stuck in your throat will come out.
When that comes in,
Um,
I think you should demonstrate it for us.
hopefully not with an actual need for it, but yeah, it does. I hadn't really even thought about that now, but it does look like a
Hmm.
little toilet plunger. But
Hmm.
that's another one of those things that I don't think they will buy for themselves
Mm-hmm.
because it's not expensive, but it's not cheap. And
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things, oh yeah, I'd like one of those, but so they had a prime deal on that, and I got those. And so if any of my daughters-in-law are listening to the podcast, you'll just have to forget about it between now and Christmas. But I thought that was something that would be useful.
Yeah.
You don't ever
Very
want to need
simple.
it, but
No,
you have it if
but
you do
mm-hmm.
need it. Yeah.
Takes away that fear of what if.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, those are cool.
Yeah. So I was going to tell you that we ate at Paula Deen while we were
Oh, yeah.
in Branson. I never had eaten there before. Have you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Never
Not in
had.
Branson, but I've been to the one in Pigeon Forge.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was good. I felt like I was like ingesting butter the whole time, but
Yes.
oh man, it was
We
good.
have one in Nashville
Yeah.
because the Carl with their Scottsville youth group, they've taken them to Nashville just to go to Paula Deen's.
Well, all you can eat. Well, I didn't know the whole concept behind it. So we went with Sam and Julie Dilbeck, and they have different on the menu. You can order for the table. You order for the table, and you all have to agree on 2 entrees, or you can go spend a little more and get 3 entrees, or a little more and get 4 entrees. And they'll keep bringing it. As long as you're asking for more, they'll keep bringing it. It's like all you can eat. But they brought little bowls.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like as soon as they set it down, we're going, we're going to need some more of that because that's my size right there. But so the entrees, we ordered chicken and dumplings and fish. And but they had other entrees and I can't remember what they were. And then you get a choice of four or five sides and they keep bringing those back. And we ordered cream corn and okra and a salad and something else I can't remember. But and the corn was so good. But I noticed when my little pile on my plate was gone, there's all these globs of butter still on the plate. So just Paula Deen is known for the butter, and she uses the butter in the restaurants and the
Now
rolls
you
that
know
they
why
bring
that
out.
corn
Oh,
was so good.
yeah,
Yeah.
because of the butter. But they bring out, it's kind of like the Red Lobster rolls, but they have these, each of them had a pat of butter already sitting on top of it.
Hmm.
So it was not a good eating week,
What'd you have
but
for
it was a good
dessert?
eating week. They had gooey butter cake and either
Mm-hmm.
chocolate or vanilla, and I got chocolate. I didn't eat it there. I took a bite and then took the rest home. It's very, very buttery,
Very gooey.
very gooey, but it was good. It was very good.
You had gooey butter cake with extra goo.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
That's right.
Sometimes goo is bad, but sometimes goo is good.
Goo be gone.
Goo be gone would not, yeah. If that's good in a way, but anyway, moving on. I told you anyway. There I go with it anyway.
Anyway, so yeah, I said you're going to make me self-conscious during this episode
Mm-hmm.
too, because I
Yeah,
say
that's
that as well.
intended to.
Thank you.
No, I didn't.
That's what friends are for.
Yeah. Well, what's going on around there with your gardening? You got anything
It is so
pulling?
neglected. Neil, if it weren't for Neil, he goes out in the mornings. He kind of hits it on his way back in from taking care of peaches and harvests for me.
Mm-hmm.
And we got some rain overnight, which is that's good also because I haven't been out there watering. And I only went out one time last week, all of last week, and did some weeding and ended up with poison ivy somehow. I don't even know how because I was only in my raised beds. But
It's funny these hobbies you have. You have a cow with the hay that you're allergic to the hay, and
yeah,
the gardening with poison ivy. So it's a good thing you have Neil.
I have actually noticed that, and we were outside the other day having a conversation about it when my arm started blistering up right here. Look at
Mm-hmm.
that. I've got it on this arm too.
Did you find
Oh
it?
no, no,
That's
and
kind of
it's
scary.
very possible it might not be from weeding. I just happened to be weeding, and I came in, and the first I noticed was these two red dots, and I said, "Look!" I showed Neil. It looked like a snake bite. I had two red dots side by
Mm-hmm.
side, and I just figured I got into some kind of prickly weed or something like that. But then it developed and it's poison ivy. Well, it could be that Ollie brushed up
Mm-hmm.
against something because he was outside with me that day and it
Mm-hmm.
got on his fur and then maybe I picked him up and so it could be that that's what happened. But anyway, I told Neil we were talking about that very same thing,
You
the
said
hay and
anyway.
ah, and then I weed the garden and I get poison ivy. I said it's like the outdoors hates me all of a sudden.
You
What's
love it
going
and
on?
it hates
I
you.
know all of a sudden I said this is the first summer where I've thought I'm not really wanting to be out there.
Some unrequited love.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you got it. That's one of those things about gardening that it's like you miss it one day, maybe 2 days, and it's all of a sudden out of control and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
kind of like
Mm-hmm.
other things in life. But
But we do have a lot of tomatoes and, of course, zucchini and cucumbers and squash. All that stuff is coming in, and I'm gonna roast a bunch of vegetables tonight in the oven. So we're still enjoying it. It's just been
mhm,
really neglected. We're kind of bringing things in despite the fact that it's been neglected. So,
yeah. Well, I know it's
uh,
good stuff. I haven't wanted to mention that my friend Alice, and I've mentioned her several times on the podcast before, but she started her really heavy duty chemo this week. Already shared with you, but I want to share with everyone else just to please pray for her. And it's a scary thing that she's about to go through, and it's like basically killing everything that's in her body in order to prepare it for what's new that they're going to put in. So
yeah.
she is in Houston at the moment and will be there probably until November.
Oh
It's a
wow.
long haul. So she and her husband Paul are both their jobs are on hold, and life is on hold. So it's I pray for her to have complete healing, but I think right now what I pray for her most of all is just to be able to face the unknown and what's next, and just each day not knowing what it's going to hold. So I know she appreciates the prayers and thoughts of everyone, of
Mm-hmm.
the friends in the among all of us. So
Yeah,
just
we will
wanted to mention
definitely
that.
be praying for Alice.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, you got anything else?
No, I don't. I don't.
All right,
I'm
so I
ready whenever
shall.
you are.
Okay, well, we're going to talk today about transitions in life, and there's so many of them going on. And in fact, we're talking about some hard ones prior to hitting record, but just how many changes do we go through in life, and how change can be tough, and how do we look at change, and how do we approach those transitions? And when you think about um, what my mom, we're fixing to. I always think about my friend Fred, who tells me in Texas, there's so many things that need fixing. So excuse me for saying fixing to, we're about to move mom tomorrow. She is going to come live here in Dripping Springs again at Hill Country Rehab and Nursing. It's like a skilled nursing center, and it is where her mother lived for about 15 years. So mom's real familiar with it. This is a decision that she made. I alluded to it earlier, but I didn't really talk much about it. But she there's a lot of changes ahead for her. And I don't think that either of us have thought of all of the different changes that there will be. But already her little puppy dog went to live with another family last week, and that transition went well, although it was painful. There's a lot of pain that goes along with even, when we lose a dog or lose a pet by death or by change. It just tears your heart out because you get so attached to our little furry friends. But I think about the transitions that mom has gone through in her life, and from growing up in Fort Worth and marrying my dad, and where all they've been as far as different jobs. And she was the church secretary. She was the secretary at McCarty Student Center for several years. And then she was the church secretary at Dripping Springs. And she was in the kind of position where everyone knew her and everyone went to her for help with, whatever she needed. If they needed a name, if they needed a phone number, if they needed to know something about someone, she would have the answer. And now it's not so much. You make that transition in life, I think, of feeling needed and feeling known, to maybe later in life you're not so needed, not so known, in a different way. And so I just think about that transition she's going through. But change, it's just necessary. You can't stay in the same place for all of your life, as much as we try. And I laughed when I thought about this. I think we all fall into different categories of how we look at change. And I think you can determine it in kindergarten. Back in the day when everyone went to public school. Now it's a little bit different. But if you think about it, you've got the kindergartners who just burst into class and they're so excited and they can't wait to see what's next. And they are excited to meet new people and make new friends and play on the playground and play with paste and eat the paste and have a new teacher. And, they're just excited about change. They're not thinking of it as change. It's just a new thing to do, and it's fun. And then you have the kiddos that walk into the door and they're walking in, but they're looking around, they're a little bit cautious and they're a little scared. They're holding their mom's hand, but they're going to do it. They're brave, but they're scared. And I think that's how I kind of probably fall a little bit into that category, but probably more than anything is the kid that's hiding behind mom and kicking and screaming going into that classroom. Don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. I want to go home. I want to watch Bluey. I want to have a snack, whatever. And so I think we kind of have those categories. Maybe it's a personality thing from the beginning of life. So I was just thinking about how, as children, that's a period where we learn. I think we learn how to look at change, and parents have a lot to do with that. And I think sometimes we as parents, we're guilty of letting our own fears of change trickle down to kids. And so they might, because we're immobile, unmoving, whatever, they are also going to be just stuck in the same place and afraid of what's next and not wanting to see anything change. So there's a lot of transitions, just from the time that we're born, you start school and whatever it is. You think about that big transition between middle school and high school, which I think was a big one. It's kind of a big deal to go from middle school to high school. And then you leave home whether it's for college or for a job or to get married or to go into the military. So there's a transition. And I think even for those of us who don't really follow the quote pattern, where you leave home, you go to school, you meet someone, you get married, you have a child, there's a lot of us who have not because they didn't want to, but their life took a different course. And that's a transition, learning to accept what is the unexpected. I expected to do this, and this is what's happening. So that's a transition. Think about marriage, going from one to two and really making the two of you become one. It's a huge transition. Then children come along, maybe. And again, there's one of those that if it doesn't happen, it's not according, or it's unexpected, whatever. But that's making that transition from no children to children. And then I was thinking how for John and me, we had 27 years of children at home from 1989 until 2016. 2020, if I did my math right, that's 27 years where our life was all about them and needing to get them where they needed to be. And in that period, we had job changes, we had home changes, we had parent, things that our parents needed, we had different friendships, just all of these changes. Then the empty nest. We've had people that asked us to cover the empty nest, and maybe that should be a whole separate topic, but I thought that's a big transition. You and I have both faced that. And it turned out to be different than I thought, turned out to be better than I thought. And then again, you end up facing the end of life. Even, your end of life years could be 30, but there's that period of time where your time. I mean, we're there. It's not like we're facing death necessarily. We don't know, but we are realizing that there's probably less time ahead of us than there is before us. And you start thinking time is running out. I had these things I wanted to do. And so there's transitions there. So I wanted us to talk about how to face transition, how to look at it, how to see it, some things to remember about it. And so that's kind of where I wanted us to spend some time this morning. What do you think?
I like your analogy, the kindergarten, different approaches and how the kids handled it. And my mind kind of went in that same direction, that some people embrace change, and variety is the spice of life and keeps life fresh and interesting. And they love something new. And, and little things, maybe they're always rearranging their house furniture, and their husband's like, why do you keep moving things around?
Yeah.
Or they love the idea of a new job, a new move, a new whatever, because they like change. And I don't think that I probably fall somewhere in the middle, because when I was growing up, we moved around a lot. And I never minded it. I don't remember ever looking back and hating that or feeling bad, or, I always enjoyed meeting new people, making new friends, so it wasn't seen as something negative for me. But on the other side of that, there are those who find change intimidating and fearful, and they find comfort in sameness, the everyday sameness, what to expect, no surprises. And so I think it depends on what the transition involves, because if it's a new purpose, a new job, a new move, a new whatever, I kind of lean on that variety is the spice of life side of things. But if it's some of the transitions that come in life that bring with it difficulties, hardships, I'm probably more of a chicken in those areas, and probably do a little backpedaling and experience that dread. Like, how am I going to handle this? How am I going to walk through this new stage that's going to bring its own unique challenges? Am I going to do it with grace, or am I going to do it whining the whole way through? So,
kicking and screaming.
Yeah. And I was trying to think if there was a transition that I could think of that you didn't mention, but I think you brought up all the ones that I also jotted down. Yeah.
Well, I think that there's, we all bring our own experiences from past transition, is kind of affects how we look at future ones. So if, like you were talking about different moves, you've had good experiences with moves, and you realized and I have too. Like, you realize that you expand the borders of your friendships, or the borders of your what your comfort zone. You realized that you good things come from change. Good things come from this transition. And so for someone that maybe had a difficult time with a prior transition, I think it's harder for them to look at
Mhm.
change as a good thing. So I that's one of those things about not everybody thinks like me. When I realized that, it kind of changed my life. And I'm like, well, I can't understand why they wouldn't be excited about that, because when I did this, it was great. But I realized that not everybody has had that same kind of experience. I do realize also that they may have had a stinky attitude going into that prior experience, that if they had looked at it differently, it would have probably turned out a little differently. And so I thought that's kind of where we want to focus some of our time, is how can we make those transitions better.
Well, and there's also the categories of some transitions we choose for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We're ready for a change. We've entered into this relationship. We decided to get married. We decided to move. But how many transitions in life happen from something that's outside of our control? And some
Good
of those
point.
things that you mentioned fall under that category, the
Mm-hmm.
aging and what that brings. And, think about your mom's situation.
Mm-hmm.
She's trying to um, make good decisions, but in some way, it's kind of happening to her.
Right.
Probably not the thing that she would have chosen for herself if
Mm-hmm.
she could. And so, probably that affects how we approach it, what our attitude is, what our mindset needs to be, the things we're praying about,
Mm-hmm.
but regardless, either one, I know it's all going to come back to, and I'm sure this is the direction you're going to go with it, trusting God through every transition,
Mm-hmm.
no matter
Yeah,
what comes. And you've
exactly.
already kind of alluded to, you kind of see what you're looking for anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Your mindset and your attitude going in is going to color how that transition goes.
Mm-hmm. That's such an excellent point, that d- depending on whether it's your choice or someone else's choice, like a job loss, and
Yeah.
if you've been laid off or let go, and that, especially if it blindsides you, then it means your life is taking a different direction than how you had pictured it. And some of us just don't deal, I've told you earlier, and you know this about me. I like to know what to expect. I just
Mm-hmm.
need to know what tomorrow, it doesn't have to be exactly what it's going to look like, but I like to know, okay, well, this is what the plan is.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden that rug is jerked out from under you, and where do you go from here? So yeah, that is excellent point.
Well,
But
a spouse leaves you,
mm,
you know,
mm-hmm,
huge transition, but it wasn't your choice,
yeah,
probably.
yeah,
Or, the cancer diagnosis. Think
mm-hmm,
how the upheaval that comes, your whole life changes.
yeah,
Everything about your whole life changes. That wasn't your choice. Some things just happen, and it's wise to think about it and have these kinds of conversations so we can prepare our hearts for them before we get to that
exactly.
unexpected transition.
Mm-hmm. I remember a couple that lived here in Dripping Springs 30 some odd years ago. And it was right about the time, Jordan was 5, I guess, and Jake was 3. And they had a little girl that was 2, and she was diagnosed with cancer. It was just one of those,
Mm.
they thought, they took her in for her 2-year-old checkup, and they came away with a cancer diagnosis. And me being in the midst of having children around that age, just I remember thinking, you wake up one day and you think that this is what your life is going to hold, and you don't, all of a sudden you don't know what the immediate future, far future, you just don't know what day to day is going to look like, and what's that going to look like for your child. It's one thing when it's something that's going on with
Mm.
you, but your child or your grandchild. So yeah, that's preparing your heart beforehand to accept what comes your way. And I don't know if there's some things that you can't really prepare for. I don't think you can, but you can prepare your heart, prepare your
Mm.
attitude, and your faith and your trust in God. And that was the first thing, like you said, that I thought of. Um, just remembering that even though there's change all around us, that God stays the same. And of course, there's those passages that Malachi 3:6 that says that I am the Lord and I will never change. And James 1:17, there's no shadow of turning with him. Isaiah 26:4, Hebrews 13:18 or 13:8, just those that tell us that he's going to stay the same. He's the Lord. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And that's helpful to me to know that no matter what, not that it's helpful to know that his character stays the same, of course, but thinking about his promises, that they are always going to be the same, that he always cares, he always listens, he always knows what's going on, he's always been there, he's walking through this with me, my tears are in his bottle, all of those things help me to think about. um, yes, my day looks different, there's something ahead that I don't know what it's going to be like, but he's already been there, he's already seen it, he's walking with me, so he doesn't ever change. And thinking about Romans 8 that talks about there's nothing that can separate me from his love, and it goes through that long list of neither this and that, and of course I can't remember exactly what all it says, but there's nothing. It's a long list of all of these things that will not be able to separate me from God's love. Now I can separate myself from it, but he's not ever going to do that. So if I choose to stay close to him, draw near to him, and he'll draw near to me.
And that list of things are big deal things. They're not little minor things. They're all significant.
Yes, in fact, I'm going to look it up real quick. Romans 8, I want to say 32.
Shall tribulation, shall distress, what all is it?
Tribulation, distress, persecution, famine, nakedness, peril, sword. For your sake, we are being put to death all day long. We were considered as sheep to be slaughtered, but in all these things we overwhelmingly conquer through him who loved us. And then he says, I'm convinced that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor things present, nor things to come. There you go, right there. Nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing will be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. So John's home. I can hear him rustling papers. I'm glad y'all can't hear it because I'm thinking it sounds like he's crinkling up newspaper. Anyway, there was another passage, and John actually mentioned it this morning. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verses 10 and 11. He's talking about God's people, but it says he found him in a desert land. God found him, God's people, or God's man or God's woman, in a desert land, and in a howling waste of a wilderness. I shrunk the size. So now he found him in a desert land and in a howling waste of a wilderness. He encircled him. He cared for him. He guarded him as the pupil of his eye. And then this one is the best. Like an eagle that stirs up its nest, that hovers over its young, he spread his wings and caught them. He carried them on his pinions. And I think of one of our sons when it was time to go to school, college. He had been pretty gung-ho about it. And then when it came time to go, there were some things that were going on here that he was really enjoying, and he just kind of decided, I think I'm going to stay here and go to school. I'm not going to go there. Well, he had already signed a letter of intent to play. I probably should quit talking about who it is. They'll figure it out who it is. Sorry. So anyway, this son of ours decided, I think I'm not going to go there. I'm going to stay here. And we said, no, you have to go. And you said you would, and you have to at least go for a semester and follow through with what you said you would do. And we took him, and we felt like we were like his fingers were on the edge of the nest. And John and I had talked so many times about how we felt like we were just stomping our heel on his fingers, making him let go of the nest. And it wasn't really that bad. It just felt really, really bad at the time. It felt like we were forcing him to do something he hated doing and didn't want to do. And it was hard. Oh, I don't think I've ever cried like I cried that weekend. We sang. I remember sitting in worship that Sunday singing How Deep the Father's Love.
Oh, man.
And hearing the young voices around me and just thinking, what are we doing? Are we doing the right thing? You know, those things that parents, you doubt, you know, you're doing the right thing, but you don't know if you're doing it the right way. And of course it turned out to be fine. But this passage, I think about the eagle that stirs up its nest and gets air underneath the little eaglets or whatever their young are called. And they're making their way out of the nest, and sometimes they fall and we catch them. But that's what God does for us. He's stirring us up sometimes. He's making us a little uncomfortable, making us face the things that we need to do, don't really want to do, but we need to do them. And he's providing a way for us to do them. And he's like, okay, you can do this. You can do this. And I'll catch you if you fall. It's going to be okay. And I just love the imagery of that how he helps us by pushing us sometimes. And that's one of the ways that God is constant, that he's going to push us to do what we need to do, but he's going to stay there with us while we do it. So I love
think
that.
that's what trusting in God really is, that even though we can't see in the moment, it's knowing that at some point in the future, we're going to look back on this and we're going to see it differently. And that hindsight is going to help us see God at work, God involved, God taking care of us through every step of the way, and probably some unexpected blessings along the way. We talked about these unexpected transitions. And a lot of times with those difficulties or whatever it might come with it, we also experience the growth and unexpected blessings that God provided through that, or maybe some refining, maybe some impurities in our own souls bubbled to the surface that we didn't even know we had. But seeing them gives us an opportunity to remove them. And that's what trust is. It's knowing that, like a parent, a loving parent, sometimes we do need that little push. And kids can't see the big picture. Kids don't understand. They don't have the experience that their parents do, that you guys did when you're looking at it, from a wiser perspective. But trusting knows that, even though I can't see it, it's going to be good. It's going to be for the good of the kingdom somehow.
Absolutely. And being willing and submitting to that happening in our lives, knowing that he doesn't want bad things to happen to us. And I think sometimes, I think I mentioned this earlier, but we parents, we don't want our kids to be uncomfortable. And so we end up not pushing them, not making them do things that they need to do. Because we didn't like being pushed to do things that we didn't like to do. But there's some things that we really have to make our kids do. And it's not fun and they get mad at us. But John used to always say to the boys, he would say, now, do you trust me? Do you know that we love you? And they'd be going, yes, we do. And since then, we've talked about this. And I feel like it'd be better to just say, I know that you trust us. Because when you ask someone to answer a question like that, you kind of back them into a corner. And I feel like maybe it's better to just make a statement out of it. But that's a different topic. But, just making sure that they remember that they trust us, that we've been around a little bit longer and we've not ever done anything to hurt them in a way that, they might think that we've hurt them, but they knew that we did it for their good. Whether it's attending a camp or going to Bible class when they didn't want to, or, whatever, all of these things that we push our kids to do. But sometimes I feel like more lately, we don't make kids do things that they don't want to do, because we say something like, well, we want them to have their own choices, make their own choices. And I think there's some things you just don't let them choose, whether or not it's time to go to the doctor for something. So when it comes to spiritual things, how much more important than those? So,
well, and along with the parents making those decisions for their child's ultimate good, even when it's hard or uncomfortable. Also, parents are making those decisions motivated by love.
Right.
Loving that child more than anybody else ever will on this earth, except for maybe their spouse, and that's also another reminder for us with our Father in heaven, and all the uncomfortable situations or difficult circumstances. No matter what, anything that we go through is going to be motivated by God's love for us. And like the passage in Hebrews that says, whom the Father loves, he chastens.
Yeah. That first summer we spent in Israel in 2017, y'all were there for a couple of weeks, but after you left, it was tough. And I know people go, oh, that had to have been really tough, spending those weeks in Israel. But that really did expose some weaknesses in me that I didn't really know about. And one of them was that need to know. I need to know what to expect. And sometimes you just can't know what to expect. You have to be okay with rolling with the punches, being flexible. But it was a difficult time in our marriage because he was gung ho about, you and he are alike about that. Let's go see, let's go do. And I wanted to do that, but I wanted to know where we were going. And if there was going to be a bathroom there, that was a big thing to me because sometimes there wasn't. The world is a man's bathroom, right? Not so much for the woman, if we can be boorish and immature for a moment.
In a
But
while, so yes.
it has. Yeah, we haven't done that in a while's time. But so, we had differences of opinion on how we would spend our days and where we would go and what we would do. And so we had to really work together to come to agreement on some things. And I think he had to come a little bit my way and realize that he pushed pretty hard to do something different every day. And I had to make myself do some things that I didn't want to do because he needed to do them. And that's what we were there for. We were there to do some research and to learn. And so that was a something that was so good for me to be pushed outside my comfort zone. And God blesses us when we do those things. So that would be the first thing that I would want us to remember, is to remember that God never changes. His expectations are very clear, and he's not ever going to encourage us to do something that we shouldn't do. And that sounds a little bit ambiguous, but all of the commandments and all of the things that we're told that he tells us to do in scripture, if we obey him, there's going to be some things that might feel a little uncomfortable, but he's going to bless us. So he's always going to be there. He's always going to stay the same. The next thing I thought we might talk about a little bit is to remember what our compass is when we're faced with these transitions and we don't know which way to go, which way to turn. What is our compass, and what direction do we look to, and how do we know which way to go? I thought about Paul in Philippians 4. There's so much in Philippians 4, but in particular, when he said in verse 11 that I've learned in whatever state I'm in to be content. So that to me is a direction. Okay, if I'm going north, south, west, or east, wherever God leads me, I'm going to learn to be content in that situation. Thinking about in that chapter how it says that we're to rejoice, and remembering that the Lord is near. He's always near. That's another one of those constants about him. Wherever we are, in the darkest parts of the world, God is there with you. And he talks to us about not being anxious, and how if we, John talks about a lot, pray right, think right, live right. That's the compass. And then we find all those things in Philippians 4, to not be anxious about it, anything but with prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And that's praying, praying and letting God know our struggles. And he's our compass. And then how that peace will guard our hearts. And then in verse 8, how we think about the right things, whatsoever things are pure and right and true, of good report, all those things that we've memorized. If we think about those things and then we do the things that we know that we're supposed to do, it's going to be okay, regardless of a new transition, a new thing to do. We can apply that template over any transition in our life. I think if we've lost a job, or if we just have chosen a new job, and we can talk to God about it, and we can remember to pray to him about it. We can think positively about whatever situation. If we've lost a job, okay, well, something better is going to come along, or something new is going to be good. So thinking the right way with positivity, and then doing the things that God has told us to do in that new transition. That's, to me, a compass. It's pointing ourselves in the right direction. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes me think of my favorite verse. It's Psalm 18:30. The word of the Lord is, depending on what version you have, sure. It's dependable, secure, it's stability. And it says that he's a shield to those who trust in him. And I usually end up putting that verse on just about everything. If I'm signing somebody's card for their wedding or bridal shower or baby shower or, any significant occasion, I find myself putting that verse under our name when we sign it, because I kind of feel like it's the compass verse,
Yeah.
as long as you keep turning to the word for your guidance and trusting in God no matter what, you'll be okay. And he's a shield to those who trust in him.
Yeah, that's a perfect verse. Sometimes you just feel like we said earlier, like the rug's been jerked out from under you and you don't know which way's up. And I think both of us have been in that situation more than once in our life. And I know our kids and families, you just see it. But when you know which way is north, sometimes it takes a little bit of reorienting and setting your feet on the ground and making sure that you're looking up. That's the compass that we have. The next one, just remember that change is life. And I found Socrates said, now I didn't check with Socrates, but the internet said that he said this, so it must be true. He said that the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So when you think about Bible people, Abraham and Sarah, for one, how old were they when they left Haran? I mean, they were not young spring chickens, 80 something, weren't they?
That sounds right.
God told them to go and they went. And it wasn't like they called U-Haul or so-and-so son's moving company and had them come pack up all their stuff and drive them away. It was just, imagine what moving was like then. And they had a lot of possessions, a lot of cattle and people. And it just kind of boggles my mind to think about what it was for them to move. And but they did it. And God didn't tell them right away where they were going to go. He said, go where I will show you. And later on, he told them about the blessings that they would have. But they trusted in him and they did it. That's just talk
Not
about
knowing
transition.
what to expect.
Yeah. And then I thought about the Israelites when they left Egypt for the wilderness. And I don't know what kind of life they lived in Egypt. I know it was hard. They were slaves. But were they comfortable? I think they must have been somewhat comfortable, because later on, when they are in the wilderness, they want to go back because, they had predictable food. They knew when they were going to get fed, or what they had water coming from the Nile. And out in the wilderness, they didn't have it. They didn't know. They had to completely trust in God. And it was tough on them. The ones that did what they were supposed to do, they ended up being blessed. But that's a big transition. And then I thought about Joseph too, and being sold into slavery, going from his family to becoming an Egyptian, basically. And when you look down through the story of Joseph, there's many times, I didn't count them, but there's many times it says the Lord was with him. When he was in the jail, in the dungeon jail, the Lord was with him. So I think about, we have to repeatedly, and when we're in the middle of these transitions, we have to repeatedly tell ourselves, God is with me here. He is facing this challenge with me. I'm not doing this by myself. And that means opening the word and examining my heart, how I am looking at this transition. Am I looking at it with only grudgingly, or that you're having to drag me into the kindergarten classroom kicking and screaming, or am I ready to see what God wants me to see is coming up? So do I have an ability to adapt?
The Joseph story is, I don't think I've ever sat down and read it, the whole thing from start to finish in one sitting. But very recently, I listened to the whole thing in one sitting, or standing really, because I was doing housework. But I'd never done that before. And I told Neil later, just listening to the whole thing unfold from beginning to end gave me chills.
Yeah.
Because you really do see God at work, and you pick up on the nuances of all the things that you just mentioned. And I also love how, in this case, our minds kind of went in the same direction. And I was trying to think of, the Bible's so relevant. There's got to be examples of people who have experienced transitions. And I came up with a list, and you didn't mention any of the ones that I came up with.
Cool.
And when you started doing that, I thought, oh, like she's going to give my stuff. But there are so many examples. And I thought of Job. His transition was a change in circumstance.
Yeah.
with
Hardly.
everything, family, health, wealth. He had all the big, he had the loss, he had, the loss of health, he had everything just happened to him. And he had a lot of questions about it, but he never lost his faith through it. And he kept talking to God, he kept trusting in God. And we know how that turns out. In the end, he's blessed even more than he was at the beginning. I thought of Moses
Mm-hmm.
and his change. He was brought up as a son of Pharaoh's daughter and ended up fleeing from all of that and going to what, Midian?
Yeah.
And then God speaks to him and he's got this grand job for him. And last night's class at VBS, Chris Young, one of our members, was teaching the text from Stephen's sermon, which Acts chapter 7. And he pointed out something in there that I've never seen before. And it was, Stephen's going through, he's given this overall account of the history. And when he gets to Moses, in chapter 7, it describes Moses as having been powerful in word and action. And he pointed out that what was one of Moses's excuses to God when God wanted to, change everything for him, put them in this new job or this big transition. And what does Moses say? I'm slow of speech.
Slow of speech, yeah.
That's at that point, God gets angry and was like, who made your mouth?
Yeah.
I will be with you. I will help you. I will tell you what to say. But in Acts, it describes him as being powerful in speech. So here's this transition that God has, this big new purpose that God has asked Moses to do. And God was with him. The very thing that he was worried about, God was with him. And when we look back and we have the New Testament account of it, it's a complete, we're more than conquerors kind of a situation. So I thought that was really good. I thought of David. What a transition for him to go from being in the pasture with the sheep to being in the palace as the king. Yeah. I thought of Saul standing there watching Stephen get stoned.
Yeah.
To go from persecutor to preacher. So many people knew what he had been doing and were afraid of him. It says that he literally wreaked havoc in the church, dragging people out of their homes. What a huge transition for him. And then, of course, Jesus. You mentioned Philippians, and in Philippians, it says that he went from being in the form of God to the form of a servant. So he's the ultimate example, the greatest example of all of transition. And for the Christian, for us, our greatest transition lies ahead. And it's when our bodies are transformed forevermore. And you said that John had mentioned a verse. I brought up our topic to Neil. And the first one that came to his mind was 2 Corinthians 4, which was so perfect. And I debated whether or not to bring this up because I'm a little bit weepy about it. But I was telling you earlier, we have a member that she's now receiving end of life care. Today might be her last day, and her husband is with her day after day in the hospital. They've been together for like 63 or 64 years. They're the cutest little couple. They always sit together in church. They always hold hands walking across the parking lot. But I was thinking about this with this passage, but really for all of us in any transition. And it says, we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light momentary affliction is preparing us for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. As we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen, which kind of goes back to your compass point. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. For we know that if the tent that is our earthly home is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. For in this tent we groan, longing to put on our heavenly dwelling, if indeed by putting it on we may not be found naked. For while we are still in this tent, we groan, being burdened, not that we should be unclothed, but that we would be further clothed, so that what is mortal may be swallowed up by life. He who has prepared us for this very thing is God, who has given us the Spirit as a guarantee. So we are always of good courage. We know that while we are at home in the body, we're away from the Lord, for we walk by faith, not by sight. Yes, we are of good courage, and we would rather be away from the body and at home with the Lord. So whether we are at home or away, we make it our aim to please him. Mm-hmm. And that's 2 Corinthians 4:16 down through chapter 5, verse 10. That, I'm thinking about Eddie and Mary Lois and what they're facing right now. But any situation, this is really our compass text. And all those examples that we've just mentioned from the Bible, when I look at these, most of these transitions were not their own choices. How relevant is the Bible to show us all these examples of people going through major change that were things out of their control? And through it all, Hebrews 11, through it all, they kept their faith by continuing to look to God, continuing to obey and trust. And they get the good courage because of what they know, even in the midst of all the unknown.
That's so good. And while you're talking, I'm just sitting here thinking that, if I can say this right, all of Scripture is all about man's transition. Every character in the Bible is facing some sort of transition, and how they go through it. And it, the Bible accounts are describing those transitions and what they, some people successfully faced them and others did not. But that's what this life is all about, is transitioning from being human to being with God, and how we make those steps, how we go from one point to the other. And all of the Bible is about encouraging us to make those transitions. And I mean, you think about it, that's what it's about. And we have Jesus as our example, how he faced the time that he was here on the earth. So it's, I hadn't really thought about it. Obviously, there's more to the Bible than transition, but really, it's about our transition from being put here on this earth to making the transition to the next life, one place or the other. So, wow, I had not really even thought about it along those lines, that's what it's all about. I thought about Esther. That was a transition that she made. But then back to Joseph, and what all of these could be summed up in some way or another in chapter 50 or 51, I think it's 50, where he says, perhaps God did this in order to bring about something that he had designed. And I'm not making that quote very well. And I'm going to look it up because it's Genesis 50. Yeah, 50 is the last chapter. So he says, remember his brothers were worried about how he was going to handle it. And he said, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring about this present result to preserve many people alive. So think about God meaning things for good. The transitions that we go through that we feel like are evil or hurtful or painful, God means things to be for our good. But I think, man, there's a lot of us that make they don't handle these transitions wisely. They make bad choices, and one just spirals to the next, and they end up in a place where they never would have imagined themselves being. Just think about that when I am driving from place to place and I see people who don't have a home to live in, or someone that I've known for a long time who's just almost unrecognizable, or even just someone that's, how did they get here? How did they get to this point in life? It's a series of bad choices, of making the wrong choice when it comes to a transition. But the good thing is that you're not ever too far away from God to turn around. In fact, someone posted this, and if I can remember, just yesterday, you're never too old to make a change. In fact, you're too old to keep doing things the way you've always been doing them. And I know that's not exactly it, but that's the gist of it. You're never too old to change things, but I am too old to keep doing something the wrong way. So turn it around and make
Ouch.
a different
Yeah.
change. Yeah.
It's good.
Then the next, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. And we've mentioned it, but how is our attitude? What is our attitude towards a transition? So we talked about that God is always the same. What is my compass? Change is life. And then what is my attitude about transition or change? And I'm not a huge fan of Oprah Winfrey, but she said something I thought was interesting. Attitude in a person can change her future simply by changing her attitude. So we can change our future just by changing our attitude. And I know that's true.
Mm-hmm.
When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. That's really hard to write because it looks, you have to put emphasis on the right word. But when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you got to have a little pity party and you just cry a little bit and think, what in the world just happened? I don't know what to do. So, okay, I'm going to give myself half an hour, or maybe it's something really big. You might need a week time limit. And then, okay, I'm going to change how I look at this. I'm going to see something good. I'm going to figure, okay, ask myself, what is God trying to do here? What does he want me to learn from this? Is there something that I need to do differently in my life? What's my attitude towards change? And so I just think that we bear responsibility in deciding, being intentional. Seems like every episode we come up with being intentional about how I look at what is going on in my life. Am I going to decide that it's a bad thing, or am I going to decide it can be a good thing? And what steps do I need to take to get to the point where I can say, okay, God, what will you have me do next? I think about Grandma Sharon Altree. What do you have for me to do today, God? So attitude is everything.
Yeah. And our feelings can be so strong, but not reliable, and like you say, sometimes you need to have a pity party, but you also need to step back, look in the mirror of the word, do a heart check, and see things wisely, see things the way God would have us to see them, to help shape our attitude and make sure it's where it needs to be. Because how easy is it to get caught up in some of those strong feelings that come from transitions, fear, anger if somebody's hurt or betrayed or left us, grief if we're experiencing loss. Those are all such strong emotions that we experience. And if we, aren't careful, at some point it can change us. It can cloud our vision. It can discourage us. It can cause us to sort of wrap up in ourselves, if that makes sense, and that's one thing that I would just add to all of this is, if you're going through a change that's difficult or some kind of transition that's difficult, please, please, please don't go through it alone.
Yeah.
And, I feel like I have the personality that would probably lean toward that temptation when things happen. Just leave me alone. I just want to hole up and be by myself. Yeah. And, but God doesn't want that for us. And it's so much harder. And when you lean on not just God in prayer, but God's people, and, and looking, you're not alone. You're not the first one to experience it, as big or as bad as it might be. Draw strength from others, draw strength from God's people. And then also don't be alone. And this idea of, if you are going through this difficult walk in life, looking for ways to cheer others and do for others, because that kind of outlook and others' perspective is also, going to help us with our attitude through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Stop living in your own head, get out and see how you can help someone else. And, think again about prayer, just using prayer. And that's the avenue we have to talk to God and let pour out our hearts to him. And just sometimes even saying things out loud, finding a corner on your own. There's something about saying your prayers out loud, at least for me, that just makes it more real. And I don't lose focus quite as much as if I'm in my head praying. But if I'm focusing on verbalizing it, then I'm more intentional about my words. And just remembering that we have that avenue, and not forgetting about that, not wasting that avenue. We have to talk to God and being in the Word and letting him talk to us in that way. helps through every transition. Those two things will help in every transition. Once you say that a few times, it's one of those words that when you say transition, you can't say it anymore. Okay. You have anything else you want to add to that? I want to address one little thing after this, but if you have any more
No, but I
suggestions.
would encourage if some of our listeners are struggling right now, going through a difficult time, and you haven't had a chance to check out the Facebook group Looking Up with Kathy and Carla, there's such a great community of women there.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing things, encouraging each other, praying for each other. I think about your friend Alice that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
You know, visit us there on that group. Share. Let us pray for you. Let us encourage you. Let us build each other up. And a lot of these transitions that we talked about today are wonderful, good things that come into life, but they also bring a lot of change that can be scary when it's new and different. And some of them are just really hard.
Yeah.
But either way, how much sweeter and stronger are we when we're doing it together?
Mm-hmm. And don't think that we're not interested. I think sometimes we say to ourselves, oh, they don't really care, or not that we think that people don't care, but they've got other things that they're thinking about, or they've got more. I hear that all the time. I know you're busy, but can I ask you? And I think we can't be too busy to be there for one another. That's what God put us here to be, for one another. And
and we also need to remember that when we see somebody else's, whatever they're struggling with or wrestling with, and they're getting prayers, scriptures, encouragement, it probably reminds us of something we're dealing with ourselves, because we're none of us are untouched by it. And when we see one person reaching out, maybe it encourages us to do the same, or at the very least, we're also encouraged and strengthened by the love and support that person is getting. I always think about that when somebody goes forward and they say something like, I just need prayers because I've had a bad attitude. I haven't been looking at things the right way, or I haven't been, whatever. Aren't you always encouraged by that?
Yeah.
And you're just their example, for one thing, of humility and strength and courage to do that. But what is said, or the prayers that they receive, you're also thinking, man, I needed that too, and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
I needed that reminder. I needed that, kick in the pants.
Yeah. Be real with one another and recognize that we're all going through something. There's that saying that you are about to go in a storm, you are in a storm, or you're just coming out of one. And when we lean on one another, then it's a little easier to get through that storm. So sometimes we're the ones receiving, sometimes we're the ones giving, but that's what we're here for, each other, to bear one another's burdens. So as far as empty nest being a transition, what would you say? How would you say, or how would you describe it? And maybe we need to at some point make it a topic, but I thought we would just briefly touch on that, because someone specifically, actually more than one person, has specifically asked us to cover the empty nest. And I personally feel like it's not a bad thing. It's a little bit of an adjustment, but I think of course, we're different people, so your experience was a little different than mine.
Well, not that I want to put it that way. I think there have been a lot of wonderful things about it, and still are, but I also made some discoveries about myself, some weaknesses that I didn't know I had. And I've mentioned this before, that it's like when the kids left home, there went my chips, that filter that kept me from saying things I shouldn't say. And when I became more free to say things that I probably shouldn't have said because there were no children listening that I had to be a good example for, it really created some problems. And having an idea in mind of what I thought our time would look like together, and maybe that not coming fruition, that created some problems, because I had these expectations, and this is how it's going to be now. And so it's been a bit of a learning curve, and that was unexpected. I think I fully anticipated it to be just wonderful, aside from missing the children, but I do think that probably needs to be a whole episode.
Yeah, it probably should. I found that it was ours was maybe more gradual than yours, because we had Jordan and Jacob left 2 years apart, but then we had 6 more years of Micah. And so it was a little bit more gradual.
Mm.
But I think there are a lot of good things that come from the empty nest if you stay close throughout, if you and your husband stay close throughout the years that you're raising kids. And that's where the intentional part comes in. So I think that's what I would encourage young moms now is to stay, keep reconnecting and focusing on each other and not losing sight of the fact that you are still married, you are still a couple, you are still in love, and it's not all about the children. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, let's table that and let's just make it a whole different topic some other time soon.
Okay.
We'll do it this season. I'll make it one of my choices. Okay, well, I think it was helpful for me to kind of write through it and make some notes and think about how just a reminder that God is never far from us, even in hard transitions in life. And you made such great points about unexpected or when it's not your own choice. And I think that really does make a difference. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully this will be helpful to those of us and everyone. Everyone's going through some sort of transition or another. So hopefully it'll be helpful. Was for me.
It was good conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have something good?
I do. I have belts. So
You have what?
belts. Look at these
Belts?
belts. It's a set of belts. See, they kind of look like braided straw, you know. So there's a buckle, and then there's all these different patterns that, yeah, they got give to them. And I love this one. It's kind of that almost zebra-y color, black and white. Yeah, it looks very African with the wooden belt, the clasp here. But I ordered them because you can, like, if you have a dress and it comes with that fabric belt that comes with the dress, you can exchange that out for a different belt to kind of upgrade the look of the dress a little bit. In this particular set, I have a couple of belts, but none of them really fit just right or hang just right, or, unless I'm wearing them with jeans. But this particular set, I have loved. I just ordered it recently and it was inexpensive. I want to say, I don't remember the exact price, but I want to say for all four of them, it was less than $20.
Wow.
And now they're not, I will say, pretty sure that's not real straw. I'm pretty sure this is probably some kind of
plastic or something.
I don't know what it is. Yeah. But I've been real happy with them. And I've got several dresses that come with just that little fabric belt. And it's kind of just changed the look altogether to switch that out for one of these belts. So I'll share the link if anybody else wants to give it a try. I'll share the link for that. Again, if you're just listening in, we are not Amazon affiliated at all or profit in any way. Sometimes we just share things because we like them and we figure people might like them too. So we just share them for the fun of it.
Exactly.
What you got?
I haven't worn a belt in a long time. I just don't do belts, but I like the way they look. I wish I could wear a belt. I just don't have anyway, I don't have the figure for a belt. All right. Mine is something that's new to me and I haven't used it a whole lot yet, but I'm pretty excited about it. It is called the Spiral Bible.
Oh.
And it's something that worked on me. Some kind of advertisement worked on me. And I thought, oh, I clicked on that. Well, I didn't. Usually when I see something, an ad, I don't click in the ad because I think they're going to learn something about me. So then I'll look at it and I'll type it in a new browser window. But
you can't hide from them.
I know. I try though. But this is the New Testament because I think the whole Bible would be crazy big. But so it's got, if you're watching, you can see that it's got places for notes, but it lays flat, so you can take notes in it. And the spiral is guaranteed for life, so they'll replace it if it breaks somehow. But I think this is something that I will really use. It's not something you could do scripture writing in. There's not enough room for that. But it's the kind of paper that's easy to take notes on. And you've got that whole section for notes. It only comes in the World English Bible, the King James, and the American Standard, I think, because those are the only ones that are in the public domain. And so if you have a favorite version that, I would have liked to have had it in the ESV or New American Standard, but they don't do that yet. But the World English Bible is what I did scripture writing in this year, and I like it. But you can still go look at the original meaning of the words and find it. But it says the Word of God for note takers. It's not something I think I'll carry around because it's heavy, but
Mhm.
it's something that I'll use on my desk and maybe transfer some notes in here. They had different covers. This is just one. They had a lot of different cover choices, but
That really looks like, go ahead,
it's just called the Spiral Bible.
the spiral. It looks like it'd be perfect for just personal Bible study when you want to
Exactly.
mark things up and
Mm-hmm.
underline and highlight and mark keywords and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But you don't necessarily want to do that in your Bible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But if
exactly.
you had
It's
that open and all your fun little things all around you and you could
mm-hmm.
just study and
Yeah.
dig for treasure,
Mm-hmm. And
that
they
looks
have
good.
coupons. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't super cheap, this one, but they have seen coupons pop up every now and
Mm.
again. So I'll share a link for that next week.
Good
That's my
one.
something good for you.
I like it.
Me too. All right. Well, it's been a good talk. I appreciate your thoughts and outlook, and know that we are both going through transitions. Our people that we love are going through some pretty heavy duty major transitions, and so we'll be praying. Ask for everyone to pray for people that you don't know and people that you do know, because there's a lot of things going on in the world, and the devil's always trying to work in those things. And I think he's trying to work in transitions too. He's trying to trip us up, discourage us, and we just have to remember to keep looking up, to look to the one who is always walking with us, and tell the devil to take a hike, because he will if we tell him to. And so it's been good, and I appreciate you, and I love you.
I love you
And
too. I think Hiram just mentioned in his sermon on Sunday, I think it was him. He said that the early church was real big on collective prayer
hmm,
and they believed in the power of collective prayer,
what is collective prayer? What do you
like
mean?
all the saints praying together.
Hmm, yeah.
Like it was just a part of they just did it and they believed in it, that it
Yeah.
accomplished things.
No, I absolutely believe in it, and know it
Mhm.
does. I know you do as well. All right. Well,
Yes.
until next time.
Keep looking up.
All right. Talk
Love
to
you,
you later.
friends.
Love you
All
too.
right. Bye.